Calling to order the March 17th, 2025 Board of Supervisors meeting. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up is the consent agenda. Second. Any items that either of you want to pull out, or Susan, is there anything you want to pull out?
No.
Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comments, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to board motions, presentations, and resolutions. First up, we have the land development at 114-440 Darby Paoli Road, Waynesboro Country Club.
Yeah, so I'll let Colleen introduce it, and then you have your full array of consultants, and then the applicants you get correct.
Sure. Waynesboro Country Club is in front of you for a land development application to a small addition to their existing cattle hut. It is my understanding the addition is to accommodate ADA, assist with ADA within the building. It is a minor addition to an existing building with minor improvements outside. It has gone in front of the planning commission at their March 4th meeting, sorry. And all township consultants have reviewed it, and from my understanding, have clean letters. So pass it along to the applicant engineer.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Ekman with Nave Knoll, along with Jim Bannon from Nave Knoll, as well as some representatives from Waynesboro Country Club. So as Colleen was just mentioning, we're here to seek recommendation for approval for preliminary and final land development plans, as well as go and discuss a couple of waivers that we have that go along with the project. It's for an addition to the existing paddle hut building that is on the property today. The existing building is about 826 square feet, surrounded by existing courts that are on raised decking. The addition would be about 866 square feet, which would put the overall footprint to around 1,700 square feet. As was mentioned, one of the main purposes of the addition is to help with bringing the building up to ADA accessibility standards. The original paddle hut was built in 1998 with only cosmetic work being done to the building throughout the year. So this is the first major overhaul in the 27 years that the building's been in existence. It's also to help, better serve the members of the club, and it's not being added on to as part of a drive to increase membership. It's only there for, to help with the existing members. So as mentioned, here's the proposed addition. Goes on to the west side of the building. Surrounded by the existing decking. The building is already served by public water and sewer, and the project will be the building will continue to use those same connections. I can show just as another representation. Squeeze in here behind you, sorry.
Maybe we can put the rendering up on the screen too.
Yeah, that might help. I'm sorry. Sorry for the people here.
Yeah.
Is it
the first one?
Yes, that's the site plan rendering. Yeah. And then, yes. So that's the aerial, and then, so this portion of the building here, if you were to follow this darker line, as well as, so this is looking at the building from the, I believe the northwestern side. And then this following this line here, those represent the existing building, that's there today. So the height of the building, roof lines, they're gonna match what's currently out there. So if are there any questions? If not, I can jump into the waivers. Yeah.
So we don't need any additional ADUs, there's no need for additional ADUs.
No, so as part of the project, there's gonna be, as far as, things inside, I mean, there's one additional toilet for ADA purposes.
So how do we decide that that does or doesn't need an ADU?
So, we're discussing that with Brady, so it's still going to be the same number of individuals that are using the building today. So even though there's, one additional, toilet in it, it's still the same number of people that be using the toilets that are there today, so the number of times being flushed will be,
Right.
you know, comparable to today.
Is it just adding a handicap stall, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, it's if it was on the edge, right, it was like 2.9 before, we had 3 ADUs and now it's 3.7, then maybe, I just don't know what the calculation is.
Yeah, so the calculation's then also gonna be based off of like the number of individuals using it as well. And we've also submitted the paperwork to DEP and have their sign off on it.
Okay,
To demand more ADUs, they'd have to do something that created more demand for the facility.
what's there now, is it just grass or?
It's, so I'll go back to. So today now, it's surrounded by, decking that goes around it, so the courts that are around it, they're raised off of the ground on platforms. And there was a, grading permit project, that happened last year, went through approval last year. There was some rework just to relay out the courts there, and
Okay.
I believe this-
You're not answering my question.
yeah,
In the specific footprint where you're gonna build a new part of the building, what's right there now, is it the decking, or is that what's there now? You're gonna rip up decking and put a building in,
yes,
if there's no grass or anything?
No.
Okay. that's-
Yeah, yes.
Okay, you're going way.
no, it's not meant to.
Okay. What's the current versus the future footprint, like, is it 3,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet, or?
So today it's about 826 square feet, with the addition will be 866 square feet. So it's a total of about 1,700 square feet.
So it's about doubling,
Mhm.
thank you.
Any other questions, or I can jump into the waivers?
I don't have any.
Okay, so on the waiver list, number 1, it refers to section 422A and section 423A. The waivers being requested is the language in that section of the ordinance asks that land development plans be put together in a scale of 1 inch equals 50 feet. They're asking for the waiver to allow the plans to be 1 inch equals 20 feet, just so it can show, you know, you get more detail at a 1 inch 20 scale. If it's a 1 inch equals 50, it zooms this out more. And then the next one on the list is 432E, and that is for the requirement for street widening. And then I'll jump actually do both of these together in 441 for curb and sidewalk. So the waivers being asked to allow for to pay a fee in lieu, and for that to be the length of what the project area frontage would be if it gets projected onto Darby Paoli Road. That's consistent with a waiver that was asked for and and granted when the back in 2019 when the pool pavilion, the whole project was redone out at the club. They like had another building. So it's showing, so it's this this dimension here, and we've discussed this with Bowman. It was in their letter and they weren't agreed with the 103 foot length.
So it's nowhere near the street.
No.
And like, how do we know that you didn't already pay this in a previous effort? And how are you gonna know 20 years from now you paid this now, and so you don't pay it again in the future?
Yeah, so as far as that's actually a good question. The I know, so when the project went through for the pool, we paid that waiver, so it would have been listed in the resolution that went through with that project. So it's, you know, be part as, you know, the plans then also, since they're land development, they get recorded as well. So that can always be looked back upon in the future.
So our expectation is that if you were to do something 20 years from now, you would look and say, oh, we already paid that, we shouldn't have to pay it again. It's up to you to do that, you being the country club.
Yes, unless the ordinance is changed in, you know, that timeframe.
Okay. It just seems weird to me. We keep giving these waivers, and I have no idea where they're recorded and tracked. Okay. And you guys are okay with the plan scale?
Yes.
In our, okay.
Any other
Questions, comments? Are there any additional waivers or are those the only?
Those are the only three.
I see two, otherwise it's three. There are different letters, more.
The planning commission letter lays out, there's a waiver as the scale and technically two waivers on the fee in lieu. One relates to the street widening and one relates to curb and sidewalk.
Okay, I'm missing the curb side. Are you paying the fee for the widening? As well as a fee for this?
Curb and sidewalk, yes, they're two separate sections of the ordinance.
Okay, well, thank you.
If the board would like, I could suggest a possible motion for discussion, and then you could take public comment, if that, unless the board has any additional initial question.
I would appreciate that, Andy.
So if the board is inclined to move forward in action, the motion could be to approve the Waynesboro Country Club Paddle Hut Edition. That's land development number 114, consistent with the Planning Commission recommendation of March 7th. And essentially that incorporates the consultant letters, the most recent ones from Carol Bowman and Tom Committa Associates. It would also approve the three waivers referenced. The first is to permit the plan scale adjustment. The second would be the partial waiver for a fee in lieu of street widening based on the street frontage adjacent to the project. And then the third waiver would be the same type of calculation for curb and sidewalk based on street frontage. And then we have really our standard conditions that the applicant stay current on reimbursing the township for consultant, legal and engineering review costs, that they still have to go through the permitting process, and that finally the approval is consistent with the information they presented to you tonight.
So. Yeah, you have to repeat that. I'll second that motion. Any additional board comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is the 2023 audit.
So we have Bob Kaufman, who is the auditor. Can you get him, can you make him present?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Okay, Bob, take us through it.
I'm with Witham Smith and Brown. As you may or may not know, in April of 2024, BVD, who previously gave your report, merged with Witham, which is why there's the change in the presentation of firm tonight. So I'm here to briefly go over the 2023 financial results and audit report. This slide demonstrates the different aspects of the audit report. Want to point out that bullets 1 through 5 reference the audit letter in the front of the audit report, which expresses the scope of the audit, management and auditors' responsibilities, and the standards by which the audit was performed. I just want to point out that in the second bullet point, it does reference that management is responsible for the preparation of the financial statements. However, in our engagement, we do compile the financial report, but then we review the draft with management to ensure they're comfortable with the information and accept responsibility for the information that is presented. So Don and his team did a great job of meeting with me and looking through the report and asking questions to gain comfort in what is in the financial report. Bullet 6 references the audit opinion that's in the audit letter, which our opinion is an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. Essentially, it's our belief that the financial statements are fairly presented and can be used by stakeholders with confidence. Bullet 7 references the schedules that are at the end of the report, which we do not give an opinion on, but we ensure that the figures are consistent with what are in the figures that are in the financial statements and footnotes. And bullet 8 is at the very end of the schedule, very end of the audit report, and it's just a report on internal control and compliance, which we don't express an opinion on, but through our testing, we do look at internal controls and compliance, and we did not note any internal control or non-compliance during our sample. So just wanted to point that out. The next slide is a general fund budget versus actual overview. And as you can see, there was a planned spend down of fund balance per the budget. And even though there was a deficit change in fund balance, the current year activity actually came in about 147,000 better than the planned spend down. The revenue variance is due to slightly less taxes collected than anticipated and a little less than miscellaneous revenue than anticipated, which can be a little bit difficult to predict and forecast from year to year. The next slide demonstrates the change in fund balance trend over the last 5 years, or not change in fund balance, excuse me, the total fund balance, ending fund balance of the last 5 years. The low in 2020 of about $1.4 million in fund balance, and the high in 2021 of about 2.6. Current year ending was about 2.17. GFOA recommends a 3-month or 25% of budgeted expenditures as a fund balance reserve to ensure operational continuity. For Easttown, this would be approximately $2.1 million. So the township is meeting that recommendation. And for those who don't know, GFOA is the Government Finance Officers Association. And they're the organization that sets the standards for that robust ACFR report, annual comprehensive financial report that you may have seen done by some school districts or other cities and other governmental entities like that. My next slide is the remaining governmental funds operating activity. As you can see, the decrease in capital projects was a result of capital purchases exceeding the tax revenues that were assessed and received for that special purpose. Increase in highway aid is a result of less snow-related expenditures than anticipated. Decrease in the library fund is a result of a planned spend down. where the planned contribution exceeded the anticipated tax revenue, and that would be the contribution to the library, excuse me. And then the decrease in parks and rec was a result of maintenance items exceeding tax revenues and charges for services in the current year. And it's kind of typical for these funds that are created due to special assessments to carry a lower fund balance, unlike the general fund. The recommendation isn't to carry 3 months of operating expenses. So I just wanted to point that out. Next slide is an overview of the solid waste and sewer operating activity. And the non-operating revenues and expenses of these funds consist of items such as grant revenues and interest revenues and expenses. Even though the main source of income is charges for services, net position for solid waste follows the same ideology for the remaining governmental funds that have tax revenues where you would anticipate to carry a lower net position. This kind of differs from the sewer fund due to the relationship with the EMA and the related debt in the EMA, where stakeholders would like to see a higher reserve so that they have confidence in their investment in those bonds. And the transfers out represent the payments to the EMA under the lease agreement related to that debt. And that is all I have for tonight. Sorry, I kind of went a little fast. So if any of the Board of Supervisors have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
So we think for better, we see this as a 2-part approval or acceptance. So this is an agenda item again at your April meeting for acceptance of the audit. You've seen it was distributed to you this weekend. It won't, there's no expectation of change between now and next month.
Understood. So there's no action item right now. This is just a presentation of the report we'll
Correct.
receive next month.
Presentation and opportunity for you to review what you've seen, ask questions to Bob, and then you'll see it as an action item at your April meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any questions. I mean, the report seems pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem like there are any significant irregularities that we need to take note of. Is that correct for me to say, Bob?
Yes, that would be correct.
Great. Anyone have any questions? Is there anything you want to ask Bob? Oh, we got him.
So we'll get this in April for approval. When do we expect the 2024 report?
We're getting right going on that. So weeks and months, not the duration of the 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation.
All right. Yep. Thank you for your time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, moving on to item C, the special event permit ordinance. Andy, are you going to take that one?
Sure. If the board would like, you can refer to your packet. There's a summary in the public agenda packet. But essentially, staff and I and your professional consultants have worked on updating and modernizing the special events ordinance. Essentially to do 2 things. One, to create greater clarity. The second is to clearly create neutral standards that don't involve discretion at the administrative level. And so what we've done, we mentioned at the last meeting, I think during Don's manager report, that in order to have this in place in a timely manner before your spring and summer seasons, which typically bring events of the kind that are regulated by the ordinance to Easttown, the ordinance has been advertised. And in your packet, you'll see you've got a copy of the amendment. You've got a proof of publication from the Daily Local News, and the advertisement ran on March 9th. We've got a notarized copy of that as well. And then the public inspection letters, they went out to the Chester County Law Library and the Daily Local. So if the board is comfortable with the updates and you feel like you're in a position to act, the motion would be to ratify that prior public advertisement and then approve and enact the ordinance. It amends and updates chapter 328 of the East Town Code, and that's the special events piece.
I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any board comment?
Has the horse show applied for a permit for this year? Or
No,
so they would fall under this? For this year.
correct, yes, and that's correct.
Yes. As would any other.
And yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to single them out in any way, shape or form. Oh, I did.
Okay. Any other board comment? Any public comment? Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Andrew Beaver, Easttown Township, Ashby Road. To get clarification, so if a organization hosts an event attended by hundreds of outside spectators, paying tickets, hosting tournaments, special media passes, would that constitute as a special event?
I think your question might be as to the YMCA and
Any organization?
the board and staff has looked at that, sort of the poll star for special events are things that bring a level of people to an event that creates interference or safety issues, especially with traffic or changes flow of traffic. And we also look at places where it's more than what happens every day. And at the Y, I think the staff in past instances has decided that some of those events that you're describing are consistent with how the Y functions, and it did not seem that additional police services were required, or EMS and safety, which are two of the large components of special events ordinance.
It looked like there was also comments online.
Go ahead, Vince.
Muted. Vince, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah.
There we go. Thanks. Guys, this is Vince Dunno, counsel for the horse show. I know that one of the supervisors had asked the question as to whether or not we had submitted an application for the 2025 horse show. And we have not. And the reason we haven't is because currently there is no special events ordinance. It was struck down by the federal courts as unconstitutional. So, we'll take a look at this one and see what we need to do with it. But that's why you haven't seen an application for the 2025 horse show. We usually have submitted it by now, and this comes up just 2 months before our horse show. So we have to figure out how we're gonna handle it.
And we would note that to the extent that that court decisions have determined that the discretionary pieces of the ordinance were problematic, that's primarily what we're addressing. I don't know that I'd agree with Mr. Donahue that the entire ordinance is invalid, but our goal is to have it in place before your spring and summer seasons.
Understood. Any other public comment? Yes.
Yeah, so I guess just for clarification, so my name's Gordon Brown, 34 Long Course Lane, Paoli, Chester County. Would food trucks and a statewide marketing campaign encouraging people from out of the district and out of the township to come to the facility qualify as a special event when there are not food trucks there 300 plus days of the year?
So there are neutral criteria in the draft ordinance, and the staff looks at all of those things factually every year. So I can't tell you that a food truck is dispositive either.
Any other public comment?
Sure. Andy, would that include, say there was excessive parking, private or the roads outside of the wide parking lot? Or would that entail special event? Because I know there was concern about that as well, as people parking across the street in the neighborhoods and then walking over if the parking lot is full.
if those are areas where parking is not permitted or the police determine that the impact of the crowd would require special police services, that could be involved. But not necessarily. Again, every event is looked at based on the facts that come before the township.
Sorry, one last question, and be very son. So do you rely on the applicant to make the determination if they need to submit an application to have that evaluation done?
Typically, an applicant comes in. There have been situations where the township understands something is happening and they feel that it's got to require special services. And in that case, the township may ask a potential applicant to come in affirmatively, so it can happen either way.
I have a question. Sorry, it says, it lists the people who review it and it lists fire chief. When we think of fire chief, are we thinking of Paoli fire chief, Berwin fire chief, or our new fire administrator?
Probably all three at this point.
Right now, it would be all three.
Well, right now it goes to both fire companies. Yeah, depending upon its location, that's right. And that, so both are in the umbrella of the review. I don't know that it had gone to Joe, the fire administrator. I don't know that it needs to, but it's sort of the direction that we're moving in.
And he's new this time around, but
Right. But we get it.
it would be logical.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing no further public comments, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, let's have it. Okay, moving on to the pickleball noise ordinance.
And I'll just mention to Vin as the horse show representative who's on deck for an event, I'll get you a copy of the signed ordinance as early as tomorrow.
So moving on to the pickleball conditional use requirements and parameters or ordinance. Andy, are we gonna take the lead on that?
Sure. So for this one, I think people who are here tonight are aware, I know the board is, that there's really been two steps that this board has considered on the pickleball issue. One involved noise parameters and creating a time of day limitation for pickleball. The board already considered and acted upon that. Part two that the board has talked about in public, and now you have a draft before you, would go further and basically say if the township approved it going forward, if there is a creation, expansion, or conversion of a court or other play areas or surfaces for pickleball use in any district within the township, any zoning district, you'd have to come in for conditional use. So in some ways, it's pretty straightforward. You already have quite a few criteria in your conditional use standards. The one important piece that I would mention that's been added is that an applicant is going to have to provide a sound mitigation report and an expert to show limited disruption of the neighboring properties. And that could involve testimony and evidence in the conditional use. If the township has an issue with that in a disputed conditional use application, typically the planning commission would appear as a party if the planning commission felt that there was a potential issue with the sound. So in other words, you're sitting as judge and jury in a conditional use and I'm representing you, but if there's a perceived need for advocacy, typically your planning commission would be a party. There could be, through the planning commission, the township may have its own sound expert to rebut or discuss the sound plan that comes with an application. So if this is approved, there will be a conditional use process in every case going forward. It wouldn't just be a permit. The procedural things that are on deck is if you're comfortable with the draft, at least to start, your motion would approve sending it to both the planning commissions. Chester County Planning Commission, which is really a paper review typically, and then the Easttown Planning Commission, and they would consider it at a public meeting. They would come back, both of them would come back to you with any comments. If you want to, you can also authorize tonight advertisement, which you have enough time, you need a 30-day period for review by the PCs, and you need 2 consecutive legal advertisements. You could place the legal advertisement in advance, which would put you in a position to act on Monday, April 21st at your next meeting. If you get a bunch of comments and input from the planning commission, or you otherwise feel like there need to be substantive changes, you can always continue that April 21st hearing. You could send things back to the planning commission, or you could decide as the board to make other changes. But if you approve tonight, send it to both planning commissions and advertise it for action on April 21st. You'll be in a position to act quickly if you want to at the April hearing. And so that's the substantive piece and then the procedural piece.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Well, I know where I stand on this. I mean, my problem with this ordinance is that it doesn't really address the actual problem, which is pickleball at the Y. I think I think it's a nice gesture. But as far as this being in addition to our ordinances, I see it as overreach to the extent that it doesn't really ameliorate any of the problems that people have come here to complain about, which is pickleball at the Y. Our sound or noise ordinance changed that. But as far as the zoning ordinance goes, I can't say that I'm fully in favor of it. I appreciate what it's trying to do, but I just think it's kind of toothless in light of the complaints we've heard. People have come here to complain about pickleball at the Y. Right now, this is a prophylactic for a problem that doesn't really exist. As far as I know, there are no plans to put in pickleball courts anywhere else. That's just how I feel about it personally. I know other members of the board feel differently, so I just want to say my piece.
And my thoughts are, they may not address the issue of the why right now, but it would address any future issues. So I don't think it hurts.
I'm in favor of that as well, and also in advertising.
How much does advertising cost?
Depends on the length. We try to keep it brief. It's usually $200 or $300.
So we run the risk if the Chester County Planning Commission comes up with some really good changes to it. If we want to adopt them, we have to advertise again.
Yes. The other thing to do is if there are supplements that you think maybe make future sense, but you want to get it in place, you could always act on it as is and then move on later changes. And as the board knows, usually every year you do some technical changes to the ordinance. We call it the omnibus updates, and you could always do later changes there too. But if you see something urgent, it's the question of delay versus action.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I'm in favor of it, just to prevent this from happening again in the future. I know there was at least there was some demand a couple of years ago to put in a pickleball court at, I think it was right here. So, it would allow this to be reviewed and, go up against this and impose requirements. So I'm in favor. I agree with your point. I don't think it's resolves any of the issues we have at the Y right now, but I think it's good for future reference.
Now, it's part of zoning, so an applicant could get a variance.
It could, although conditional use is a somewhat lesser standard. It's more like a special exception in front of a zoning hearing board. So a conditional use authorization would recognize that it's a use that you see. It's not so far out of an expectation that you would have court sports in Easttown Township. But for this one, there has to be a hearing and a sound showing specifically.
But if they don't like it, they can go to the zoning hearing board to get a variance from whatever we decide.
They could, but it would be a higher burden of proof.
Right.
So I would say that would be pretty unusual if this were in place.
So I'll make them, sorry, go ahead.
I think you said a higher burden of proof. I mean, I've looked through hundreds of zoning hearing board cases, they approve almost 99% of them, so. Okay, that's where I'm standing on it. So.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, one of the legislative things though is you can legislatively decide to keep these hearings in front of the board, which I think was the board's general feeling, and that's a conditional use. If you wanted it in front of the zoning hearing board legislatively, you'd make it a special exception.
Okay, thanks.
I'll make the motion to submit the zoning ordinance amendment to the Chester County Planning Commission and to authorize placement of the legal advertisement.
Second.
And also the Township Planning Commission as well.
Correct. So moved.
There's a second. Any other board comment? Any public comment?
John Buletta, 1435 Streeton Road. Andy, thank you and your staff for the effort here. I know I brought it up. It's absolutely prophylactic, okay? The opportunity for pickleball courts to be expanded to the back of the Y is a real thing. They've said no. But by way of background, I sat on that Y board for 8 years. Co-chair of the local board, member of the association board. Things change rapidly. I sat through skate parks, pools, additions to the front. So this is absolutely prophylactic. I'm actually concerned that it hasn't gone far enough, given the other variances or ordinances I've read from throughout the country. A lot of them limit to that there should be no tournaments played as a condition in certain areas. There are other ordinances that say they must use the latest technology, sound dampening technology, meaning the paddles and the balls have to be the most recent ones available to dampen the sound. This ordinance doesn't do that, but it's a good first step. My other concern is what is the ability of the neighbors to bring in their own report should they find this to become a burden to them, should a pickleball court miraculously appear in the back of the Y. I don't know how that works, Andy, you could light me on that, I'd appreciate it, whether we could bring in our own sound engineers or not. So that's one concern. My second concern is there anything to prevent the YMCA from taking a proactive step of painting some new lines on the tennis courts in the back and coming in here and saying they're grandfathered in after this action today? That's a very major concern. Because I'm telling you right now, if I was on the board, I'd go out there and paint the lines myself. And so the question is, they can come here and say all they want, that they have no plans to do it today. Doesn't mean they don't have plans to do it tomorrow, especially with the pressures they're facing up front. So there are my questions on this. And so
I can try to answer them in order on the conditional use question. If a hearing is convened, close-in neighbors certainly have party status.
Okay.
Normally, the closer you are, the more likely you are to be recognized as a party. An adjoining neighbor is typically recognized. That gives a neighbor an opportunity to prevent testimony and evidence. So if you have a close-in neighbor and other neighbors are working with that person, you could definitely have a party. If the ordinance is in place and pickleball is created, what would typically happen is a notice from the township that requires conditional use, or it could be an enforcement notice to stop it pending the hearing.
If they go and paint the lines tomorrow, to create pickleball courts, since we're going through the process of advertising, they can't grandfather themselves in at that point. Right?
There's a concept, it's somewhat complicated, called the pending ordinance rule. In the scenario, I think, that was just mentioned, now you've announced it publicly. If you authorize the advertisement tonight, the world knows about it. If if somebody comes in and paints lines and starts an activity, arguably the pending ordinance doctrine applies, that you can say you're subject to the new ordinance if approved. If it's a bigger project like land development, some of the cases go another way on that. There's a question of whether a full-blown land development application beats an ordinance. So there are two scenarios. One is more positive than another, which is why, as I understand it, the board wanted potentially to package both the advertisement and the referral, so you're in a position to act next month.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other public comment? So none online, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay, ayes have it. Okay, moving on to next item on our agenda is trash and recycling collection RFP.
Yeah, so I'll just brief a little bit. We brought it to you last month. We brought it to you as concepts. We've since worked the agreement. We're ready to post it. There's one distinction from what we represented last month that I want Joe to talk to you about. Sure.
Yeah, so this contract will now include a maximum of 1 year as a transition year for the hauler to become compliant for automation for trash. It will take time to purchase and take delivery of the vehicles if needed to comply with our automation requirements of our specifications. So that'll help us get more competitive bids, get more companies involved, companies that may not have the inventory of vehicles they need right up front, but it gives them a year to comply and purchase and take delivery of vehicles to become compliant.
So the thought was it would make the bids more competitive. It doesn't, I don't think there's a downside to it. It just means that somebody can collect the trash in the conventional manner for a year. We've given them a specific deadline of October of 26 to complete the transition.
I understand fire trucks are in about 2 to 3 year cycle. Do we know if trash trucks take that long or?
Don't know.
Not our issue.
Yeah, and also the issue wasn't necessarily purchase. The issue might have been reallocated. So we're just two civil engineers trying to write it the best way. And that was the determination that we might have boxed you in too much with the old form. So that's why we made a subtle change to it, which we think has a potential upside without a negative to it. So I don't know, Andy, we had at the last meeting, they had made a motion to authorize us to issue it to bid. That's what I just described is the only change that we have in the RFP that's ready to go tomorrow. Do we need some kind of action?
Since you have it on as an action item, it could just be a motion to authorize the release of the bid/RFP as amended.
So moved.
Second. Okay. More comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And even though Alex stepped out, the minutes would show we have 3, you have a majority and a quorum, so thanks.
Moving on to item F, complete streets professional service agreements.
Sure, I'm gonna let Colleen handle this one for us. Colleen, just describe the LSA and what's tonight.
Sure. So the township was awarded an LSA grant in the amount of $505,000. We have Bowman prepared the grant application, which was awarded. Bowman has provided a PSA along with Tom Comita to prepare essentially a survey and existing conditions plan to evaluate Lancaster Avenue and to see if a road diet would be beneficial or complete streets. This is just an evaluation, a tool for us to eventually move forward and complete the downtown village area of our liking. Bowman is here to discuss, along with Tom Comita, their separate parts of the PSA.
Just little color to it, the road diet is just one component of the complete street. And the output, the deliverable is the collection of plans that are they're not construction-ready plans, but it's sort of an informed vision. For someone to build to tell you what is on the corridor and how it should be arranged, it takes sophistication of transportation sophistication in particular. So an informed vision, an informed plan for the corridor that you put in the application. And both consultants are here if you wanted to put particular questions to them.
Sure. Okay. So I think I've been pretty consistent. I'm not a big fan of the road diet concept. Primarily because Route 30 used to be 2 lanes or 1 lane in each direction. And we spent a lot of money to make it 2 lanes in each direction. But I am a big fan of a town square kind of concept of, and I see some of the stuff in here in terms of creating a place to be, a place to go. And I think the town square would give us more of that. So I'd be very interested in participating as much as I can so that I can steer as much as I can towards in that direction and away from road diet. With the boards. I mean, I'm only one member of the board. I'm not trying to usurp anybody else.
We do want to elaborate a little bit on road diet. So Chris, just describe a little bit what we talked about in the meeting, how it has to be determined if road diet is even a thing.
Yeah.
And there's waypoints set up, so it'll come back to you as this is the analysis. The analysis might tell you that you don't have opportunity to do a road diet, so. Chris,
Yeah, so Chris Williams with Bowman, with me is Randy Waltermeyer from Bowman and Tom Comita, who you all know. So there is no preconceived solution going into this for the road diet. So the road diet was not our idea. This was an idea that I think was born out of the last comprehensive plan update. So it's just kind of lingering out there as a question, doing a road diet or not. So the idea of the road diet, realizing there are maybe concerns around it, if there were support for it and if it made sense, the upside is it gives you more room to work with within the street footprint that you could potentially do other things towards a complete street solution. But you're not going to implement a road diet at the expense of creating traffic problems. So part of this process will be to once and for all evaluate the feasibility of a road diet. So we'll be looking at traffic volumes, looking at the functionality of the corridor, with the current lane configuration, or if you were to drop the lane configuration. So a road diet is essentially when you have a 4-lane road, you would make it a 2-lane road, but you would introduce a center left turn lane, a consistent center left turn lane. So a 4-lane road becomes a 3-lane road, and then that added real estate becomes available for other things. But you're not going to do that if it creates a traffic problem, right? So that's part of what we have to figure out. So through the process, there will be plenty of check-in points. There's a robust public outreach element to this project. We're working with a steering committee at the township level to guide the process. So yeah, we will not be doing this on our own. We'll be doing this hand in hand with the municipality, with PennDOT, as we evaluate. I'd say road diet is just one of many options that would be evaluated through this project to ultimately the goal is to arrive at a complete street solution for the corridor from essentially Leopard Road to Lakeside. And then, the town square element is really that sense of place aspect of the project, which to me, I'm the traffic engineer, Tom's the planner, right? So he's the sense of place guy, but the sense of place, the town square links really well to the complete streets concept of providing options and transportation solutions for all users, right? Not just the car. Route 30 historically has been a very vehicle-centric corridor, so we're looking to change that within Berwyn. So there's a lot of elements to it. Randy knows the project better than I do. Tom knows the project better than I do from a sense of, placemaking. But, that's kind of a high-level overview of the project. That combined with looking at market analysis and economic, opportunities for the corridor and then parking. There's a parking element too. So all of that will be tied together through this project, which is entirely 100% grant funded, which is a tremendous
opportunity. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was kind of my understanding, that this was the ability for the township to make an informed decision about what to do with its spaces, so.
Yeah, it's
That's
the way to
good to
put it.
hear.
It's it is so that you can take something that's a concept and you can decide if you want to proceed with that concept.
Any other questions or comments?
I see a comment about steering committee, but no indication who's on that steering committee.
Well, we talked about that at the last meeting. The intention is to have the planning commission be the steering committee. And, you know, that has to be your decision. So I think it's problematic. So first, you've got a planning commission that's been active and engaged in this. And then is arguably going to be objective. You didn't create the committee. If you create the committee to address the issue, you bring the biases of the creation. So that's the plan at this point, is the planning commission. The public check-ins are at the planning commission and at your board.
And is the steering committee gonna be publicly?
But all planning commission meetings are
So
public.
they'll do it at their normal planning commission meetings?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Correct, Chris, that's the way we envisioned it.
Yep.
That's staff, that's the vision we had for it.
And I would note, there's also 3 presentations back to the Board of Supervisors, basically at third marks throughout the process. Again, to make sure that we're staying in sync with
Yes.
the,
So if you hate something, you're gonna hear about it at the first or the second meeting. It's not gonna come to you as a final product and you get to tell them that you don't like it. You'll get the opportunity to identify the aspects of it that you find agreeable before it's a final product.
So I read this, there's gonna be 6 meetings at the planning commission for the steering committee, and there'll be 2 separate public meetings. So, just specifically for
I'm gonna leave that one to Randy.
Yep.
The
you
details.
have two public workshops that,
independent of the planning commission, just.
correct, that openly advertised. The first one being more to listen to the community, what the key issues that they're hearing. The second one being more solution-based, coming back to them then with maybe those scenarios, the alternatives, to see which one best aligns with the community preferences and objectives.
And your group, if there is a difference of opinion that is generated from a session like that, that has to be resolved by you as the sovereign. It won't be like there's a meeting at the library and they voted 205 to 204 to do something, and off we go in that direction.
And I see one business owner outreach event. Are we gonna try and engage the business, the Riverwind business? Whatever they're called, early on, so that they can come to these other meetings if they're interested.
Yeah, they'd be certainly welcome to come engage in the other workshops, but we're also giving them a special focus group just to speak a little bit more closed door to hear specific business
Right.
questions and concerns.
This greatly impacts them, I would suggest.
And there is a market analysis that's part of it. You see that.
Is there an action associated with this?
Yes, approve the PSAs. So if you approve the PSAs, then we will initiate the work.
I'll make that motion to approve the PSAs. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other board comment? Any public comment?
I just have one, in addition to what Chris and Randy just said, the interesting part about the Complete Streets initiative is that not only did the comprehensive plan identify and has several pages on it, when we did the Recreation Open Space Environmental Resources Plan, we took the temperature of all those who sat with us in 4 workshops, during which time there was great affection to do a town square concept in Berlin. So the idea is that this initiative helps to implement the comprehensive plan. It helps to implement the recreation, open space, and environmental resources plan. So I just wanted to add that other element.
I was gonna ask you, how do you input, but I didn't want to put you on the spot. So thank you for offering that. Any additional public comment? Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm sort of new at hearing about this. Where is this town square Berwyn proposed to be?
So there is no proposed square. The plan is to do an evaluation, and if that's part of the, part of their report is that maybe this would be a good place for a square. We'll hear about it then, but
I
this
see.
is the project to even get there in the first
Okay.
place.
But it's sort of, you're talking about the Lancaster Avenue kind of area. Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much.
Purposes of the minutes, would you mind giving your name?
I'm sorry, Diane Warner, Llewellyn Road, Berwyn.
Thank you.
And just to clarify my viewpoint on the town square is, it could be a 30-year project. It's not necessarily something that's gonna happen tomorrow.
Okay.
So, and I'd be okay with that. Every journey starts with the first step.
And it probably can't come from this step. This step can help it,
Mhm.
but it's probably, this step is gonna have a limited depth
Mhm.
into the right of way.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of the proposed motion, say aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to the Hilltop House Catering Operations Agreement.
You know, let John handle this one?
Sure. So last month we had the proposal from Jerry and Deb, who are the principals for setting catering. Jerry is here tonight. I just thought he wasn't available to attend last month's meeting, but it was just more appropriate to have a dialogue with Jerry tonight to answer the board's questions pertaining to his proposal for the 2026 agreement. Your contract for Hilltop House Catering still runs through the end of this year, so this would be for 2026. So, Jerry, deal?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Yeah, we've been the caterer at Hilltop House since 2020, interrupted, of course, by a big chunk of the pandemic, but that was on a lease. That was on a 4-year lease. Because the township is up in the air about what's happening with this facility and the footprint generally of this complex. We've gone year to year, starting this year. Next year, the idea is it's going to be year to year as well until things get sorted out. I made a proposal basically based around the kinds of room rentals are a portion of our contracts with these catered affairs. And my recommendation had to do with what we were taking in. We tend to fall short on the room rentals and pay for it out of the catering. We like the relationship, we love the venue, we love the community connection. We're flexible about all of this in terms of what that number is gonna be. But I put something forward so that we could have a place to start and weigh in with what you think, folks. I appreciate that.
And the sort of the operative is the 54,000 you're getting your current rent is
63.
63, so you're asking to reduce it to 50.
I was because last year was a year in which we came in 24,000 under on the room rentals. And again, I know that the traffic will only bear so much in terms of dropping this number. Honestly, I do. It's a lovely spot. It has a unique purpose. It's not a slam dunk as a rental because you can't do 150 in the same room. It's broken spaces, it's rehearsal dinners, it's baby showers, it's memorial luncheons. That's sort of its primary use. As I say, we love to maintain the connection. And we have an open mind on the subject. We could split the difference.
And on our end, so we would have difficulty netting, like we are just not caterers. So this was all of the things that the restrictions that Jerry identified were purposeful restrictions 8 years ago.
Correct. Noise ordinances,
Yes,
we've discussed that.
and also to recognize that you didn't want to have a band out there projecting twice a week in the summer.
Unless it's Elvis.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So as I recall, the 4 or 5 years prior to setting this up, we essentially net zero every year. Because it cost us as much as we got.
Yeah, your cash cow going back was the craft show every November.
Mhm.
That was a big chunk of money, otherwise you didn't do much.
Right.
And you were paying a salesperson.
Right. So I don't think we ever.
And we,
Substantial money.
yes.
Yeah.
And we also, I'm making decisions about whether to advertise in a bridal magazine. That's just not a very, that's not a victory.
I hope
So-
you delegate that.
Well, but I was public works director, so we were making those kinds of decisions. We were, adjusting the website. We were talking to,
Phone number.
yes, it wasn't our thing.
Mhm.
This is, the decision was made to be, it's better for us to be a landlord than a caterer. So, it's worked very nicely from our end. It's gotten us as a staff out of the day-to-day decision-making of the catering operations. And it ensures that you get revenue, and that revenue goes back into the building, a sizable amount goes back into the building in the form of incidental repairs and, kind of minor capital upgrades.
And we've done quite a bit in the area of the website, which is owned by the township and should be owned by the township, has been greatly upgraded. It's a good sales tool right now. We do advertising in 3 or 4 of the regional publications, so the visibility is out there. And frankly, folks, we do lots of tours. It's just that when it comes to the bride and her mom, if they're seeing, their number's always ridiculous, by the way. They're gonna do 2 1/4 regardless, but they're not. But they fear that we're not gonna be able to, accommodate everybody. So, 60% of those folks move on. And that's sort of the reality. I talked to John about expanding the footprint. And we all know what that's likely to mean. That's likely to mean, I don't know, I'd love to do it, frankly. But I know the neighbors probably as well as you do by this point in time, so it may or may not be a good idea.
And we have 0 neighbor complaints in the 6 years that you've been running it. So the rules that we put in place seem to have resolved all the prospective issues with neighbors. So, and you also don't think that if you put this out, it'll be runaway opportunity at a whole bunch of some money. That was, how we got to the rate we got to was through a public process. So it's not like this is a financial opportunity for you. This is a facility that someone is managing on your behalf because they are better managers than we are. So you just have to decide if you're willing to, you had decided, last time you had said you weren't willing to compromise the price in any way. If that's the case, then Jerry would just have to make a business decision about whether he wants to operate it. If he chooses not to operate it, then you have to make a decision about how you want it operated, whether you want us to go out in the same form that we did last time, or whether you want us to issue something in a different form. And then you have one other piece of uncertainty, sorry about that. It's tied to the building. So you're in the midst of deciding what you want to do with the building and the campus. We think you would have a difficult time convincing someone to be in a long-term relationship with you as a landlord with guaranteed money when you don't know what you're doing with the building on the 2 to 3 year horizon. So I hope I captured it correctly. John, anything to add to
That's
it?
everything, yeah.
Jerry, anything to add? That's sort of the.
No, that's
The business decision tonight is, you're good for the rest of the year. What do you want to do for 2026?
Well, it was a lot to chew on for the board because we have to look historically back on what's been collected. We're mindful of the fact that you've been a great tenant for the town. I think you've done a very good job, I think, at managing Hilltop House.
Well, we live around here, you gotta get along.
Yeah. Understood. And so I think what this, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think what the board was grappling with was a significant reduction in the appearance of that, to the township, because I think township residents see that and it looks like we're just kind of like,
Just erased.
holding like a deck of cards, right? And so, and it is, it is a fairly significant drop from the year prior. So I think that was the sticker shock. For the
I understand completely. And I did it based on, just very, very simply based on last year's numbers. If that number doesn't fly, and we gotta get it. Because this year's number's not the worst, you know what I mean? So if it's this year's number, maybe I'll take it back to my team. If it's somewhere between the two, you know, we're all ears about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know, I don't wanna speak for the entire board, I'm not the negotiator
understand.
here, but.
And what was this year's numbers, the same as 2024?
53,000.
53 was last year.
Is
Or,
this-
that's this year, correct? Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is it sounds like you're willing to split the difference? Is that-
Positively,
okay.
yeah.
So the difficulty that I have is just from the numbers that are here, if they're accurate. 22 was 72,000 paid to the township, 23 is 65 paid to the township, and 24 is 66 paid to the township. So 25 is 63 paid to the township. So it already has decreased, let's say, $9,000 a year since 2022. The difficulty that I have is that I have a hard time finding places where the rent has gone down for the last 3 years. Not saying it's, you know, inappropriate in terms of the pricing. I have a hard time finding those places where the rent has gone down, residential or commercial. So I'm having trouble with saying, yes, let's drop the price to this place, $20,000 a year in comparison to where it was 3 or 4 years ago. That gives me trouble.
No. I completely understand where you're going with that. I think that, I mean, we would consider this year's number. One reason why we keep dropping the number is because, you know, as outstanding residents of East Township, we lose money every year, and it tends to be more each and every year. So I'm reacting to what I see. That's kind of what,
Right.
that explains that.
What if the original amount were too high? And we've actually gotten to where it should have been in the beginning. I don't know that's true, but you're saying it dropped down, true, but maybe we're gouging, no.
Yeah.
But Alex, I take your point. I mean,
Yeah.
63 is not a bad number, you know, just, you know, relatively speaking.
And it was the lowest rate when it was selected. So there's lots of other people that proposed, not lots. There were 3 or 4 applications or 3 or 4 responses. And part of jury rate was the lowest rate in that group. So others had a vision that was was more expensive. More expensive to you, that's what I mean.
I mean, I want to keep the relationship going, so whatever I'm okay with whatever we, the board, decide to do, but whatever we do, I hope we keep the relationship going.
You had made a comment that should we exceed the projections, we'd be happy to additionally compensate the township.
Yeah, there are a variety of formulas, you know, one would, if we can keep the paperwork on that, and if our number exceeds the number we do to you, we'll give you the difference. A lot of venues also basically simply have their caterer turn over the venue rental right to the township. And that's also a possibility. So you would be dollar for dollar, you know, where we think we should be.
Andy, has the township done that before, structured deal such that? This seems somewhat complex to figure out.
Yeah.
Also, he
And
incentivizes you from.
Yeah, I'll say that I was specifically selected to not do that, because if you do
Yeah,
that,
it's not a good budget.
then you
number, right.
disincentivize them, so purposefully, that strategy was avoided to incentivize, he has an obligation, he has incentive to operate it. If you switch it to the other way, then it can just, he could leave at any time and not,
I think from a policy perspective, my recollection is when the township got out of the business of doing it itself, it wanted more of a turnkey operation, and as Don said, sort of incentivize the vendor. Whatever the board wants to do, you do have flexibility, though. We've looked at it with staff in the past, and we think this is much closer to a professional service, that you're not buying a widget at the lowest price. You're you're basing it on quality and their ability to successfully serve the venue.
Alex, could you live with $60,000?
It's not my call, it's a collective call, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I mean, I'm comfortable with the current number, 63,000, it's still a reduction compared to 22, 23, 24, same as what it is this year. That sounds reasonable to me, but look for more input as well as Susan online.
And I think you just have to decide, have to pick one and vote on it, because if you can't come to agreement, then Jerry has to make a business decision. If Jerry's business decision is to not operate it, then we have to work the process out to you as.
I would be willing to split the difference, as he said, from what we came back with and what he's estimating, what he came forward with first initially.
Yeah, what would split the difference be? What would that be?
I think 58.5.
58.5.
And then there would be profit sharing above that if there was.
Correct. If it got beyond that, then that money goes to township.
I have no problem with that. I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that, Alex.
Doesn't matter anymore.
So our input is always valued.
Why we're a great country, because that's how we decide things.
I think you would. So am I hearing the motion for 2026 would be a one-year addendum for 58,500? But I'm unclear on the.
Yeah, probably
on the
best to
overage.
just keep that as a
Marker.
a commitment to evaluate the
Should the number exceed.
should the number exceed, because you want that to be something that John is
Should
involved
what
with.
number?
So you have a formula that you use that got you to that 58.
Correct.
Yeah,
Have
so.
the township seen that formula?
No, I haven't seen that. No, and I'm back to, I don't want to be part, like the whole logic of this to me is that we're not calculating formulas. But this is a strong working relationship of trust. And if Jerry's bookings rise to the level of exceeding that, where he's gonna come to us, and then we can go through some kind of scenario that we would come back to you. So I think you're gonna have a tough time working that out tonight. If you're comfortable with that very broad concept, I think it's doable.
I think that's fine, but I think at the administrative level, the board could say, township administration will work with the applicant on an agreed to formula if the revenue merits additional rent.
Something to that effect is what I have in mind.
But that you'll leave it to staff to work with the applicant on exactly what that math.
Can we settle on that number? Because I haven't told John the repairs.
So
I need to
I
go
just
in.
don't know that it's prudent for us to settle on a number now.
I understand.
So if there's a lot of trust, if you're agreeable to the concept and Andy articulated it very well, then I think you can proceed.
Yeah, I think we have consensus there, and obviously
Thanks,
it's a
folks.
long-standing relationship. We've built a lot of trust together, and I think we can continue that relationship and work with each other in an amicable way. So I appreciate it.
Greatly appreciate it, folks. Thanks so much.
So since it is an action item, I think the motion is for 58.5 with an administrative agreement with the Hilltop vendor to work out a formula for success that may bring more rent to the township.
We could do like,
So
just 1 minute.
So Michael, if that is your motion.
That's exactly my motion.
Okay, so we would still need a second, so
A second. Oh,
any public discussion or board discussion.
Any board comment before I pass to the public? Any public comment? Seeing none or do you have?
Not a thing.
All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it.
Thanks so much, folks. Appreciate it.
A little painful, sorry about that, but it did get to the end. Did get us all to the end, so thank you.
Okay, moving on to next item on the agenda, 2025 ECAC initiatives.
Okay, so ECAC, this is really started staff, developed a little list of prospective items at ECAC. Michael has shared each of those with you as in his reports. I've summarized them in the memo, so I can talk about any particular one of them if you want. At this point, none of these are a solution. None of these are a preordained solution. They are areas that staff sees as ripe for improvement. A little bit of review with the ECAC for ECAC to assess its opinion of these as an area that is ripe for improvement. If you approve it tonight, this is essentially giving them the authority to initiate those determinations or those evaluations. There's nothing that will change from them except through your board and through the normal deliberative process. So any questions about the scope of things? If you have no questions about the scope, if you're comfortable with it, then a motion to authorize the ECAC to proceed with the evaluations identified in the memo seems to be the working directive.
And they believe that they can accomplish all these by the end of this year?
No. So some of them can be done by this year. Some of them you might not want done by this year. Some of them might trigger on, the one that's in particular is the EIT revenue. So the EIT revenue, you really won't have a sense of that until late summer. So some of these might pause and get continued in the future. Some might finish in 3 to 4 months. So they become ongoing assignments until a solution is delivered.
So are they looking for us to approve this? Is there action from us tonight?
Yes, I think that's prudent, is you to approve it so that they can initiate the work.
And then my follow-up question is, so we're essentially blanket approving this or whatever, pulling something out, and then they prioritize? Are they looking for us to prioritize?
No, there's no prioritizing needed. So they have assembled assigned each of these into small working groups. So each little working group will initiate the evaluation, report back to ECAC. If ECAC then has something that it wants to recommend, it will make a recommendation to you.
Okay.
It's pretty sensible. It's flowed from general to particular.
Right.
It's been thoughtful and slow at this point.
And there was a history of ECAC doing things and without clear deliverables, and then they didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So this clarifies that.
And they shouldn't be evaluating something if you think it's a bad idea. If you think it's gonna lead to a solution that you don't want, then you don't want them going down a route that is not positive or unproductive. So all of these things are productive, in my opinion. All of these things will help you make informed decisions and help us be better caretakers of your finances.
Yeah, I think this is a good step in terms of kind of creating expectations. And I think most of this is just providing recommendations as they see it, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah.
My only question is the last item, the finance open access module has you, Mike, as one of the participants for ECAC.
Right.
That's a punishment to Michael.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, does that raise any concerns, Andy, in terms of because he's not on ECAC, so I don't want to step on any procedural toes in terms of having people attached to a committee. It just has your name.
Yeah, let me interject why this is, the board just put the budget money for that module in the budget this year, and I was appointed or punished, however you want to say it, to look into that. And this is just asking ECAC for help in doing that evaluation. I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
Yeah, I think your participation, if it's part of that component, doesn't seem problematic.
And the logic of that from my end is that if someone has an idea, they come to you and they say, here's my idea, and you authorize them, then that's your champion for the idea. So this was Michael's idea, so there's a little bit of a burden on Michael to work through the process and convince you all it's a good idea. Again, nothing happens without you. It isn't like the ECAC will give you an output and then the staff will go and implement the output.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure that was okay, because that was the only thing that jumped off the page at me. Even that project seems in line with what we talked about before, so just want to make sure that's okay. Okay, do we need to make a motion? Do we have, I think we can just move by consensus, right?
I think so, just to,
Yeah, so Susan was just,
refer to ECAC to
yeah,
follow.
that,
follow up.
there was a unanimous consent to proceed with the ECAC evaluations as defined in the manager's memo.
Love that capital planning idea that they had there. Nice job.
Good.
Okay, moving on to the next item,
All right, I'm gonna let Sue take the lead on this one. Is that all right? Sue, this is the bank account checking
Yep.
savings.
So what we want to do is close 5 savings accounts and have nothing but checking accounts. And that will raise our interest rate from 0.03% in the checking accounts and 3.56% in the savings accounts to one consistent interest rate of 3.87 across the board. So they will be treating us as total assets, money under management, and will generate more interest revenue for you.
How much?
I'm sorry,
How much per year do you think?
I'd have to calculate
Well,
that.
I think
I
it,
would-
yeah, I want to be, but I think it's gonna be north of 6 figures.
Yes.
That's why,
Wow.
that's part of why it's jumped ahead of the others, that this is one where we don't want to wait. There's no downside. So what you had was 17 accounts with 17 interest rates from 0.03 to reasonable savings account rates. But you have, on average, almost $9 million a day in the bank. And so we just went to them and said, don't treat us like a park and rec fund with $67,000 in the account. Treat us as a customer with 9 million in the account. The interest rate they came back with was higher than the interest rate on the highest savings account. So, and when we get to it, when we see that, we will certainly let you know how much the savings, but I'm expecting it's 5 figures a month. That's what my hope is.
There's no penalties in terms of like withdrawal amounts or?
Yeah, so nothing's changing.
Thank you.
Nothing's changing in how the money is managed or the form of the checking accounts. It's all staying identical. It's just, they're not treating us as 17 customers with 17 accounts. They're treating us as one customer with $9 million in the bank. Some of this is due to the way interest rates have gone. 5 years ago, there wasn't any reason to have these exercises or there was less reason because you were getting so little in checkings and savings that it hardly made it worthwhile. The Pliget money becomes a little bit of a leverage that it's very easy for you to move money over into Pliget and get 4.1%. So it forced the bank to come up and treat that. So we think we can improve this for you if you let us do this.
I'd also add that doing this, all of your money is fully collateralized, so it's protected. Which is good.
Which if you switch mechanisms, then you have to make a decision about whether you're comfortable switching the mechanisms. That would be probably pretty complex. In this, nothing is changing. The bank isn't changing how it manages the money, how it manages your money.
Just the $9 million is an average daily balance, right? There are times when we are a lot less than 9 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
You go from 6 to 12 plus or minus. So 6 is on your lowest day, your least full day, you're in the high 5s, and your highest day, you're north of 12.
Andy, there are no legal considerations or risks with changing the accounts.
I sent to Don sort of a Pliget cheat sheet that shows all of the appropriate investments. And I think Don took that to staff and everyone's comfortable that they're within those
Yeah.
parameters.
And we're not changing the accounts. All we're doing is taking the savings and putting them into checking, and they're gonna get more interest in because we are one customer with 9 million in the bank instead of 17 customers.
But you're not investing in pork belly futures or
Yes.
something like
You're
that.
not doing anything differently with the money.
Can we?
Very traditional second-class township code authorized investment.
Are we able to invest in like muni bonds or treasuries or something like that?
There are, a couple of years ago, there was a statute that passed that allows some treasury, like T-bill kind of investment.
So something for us to look into potentially.
Yes, well, Alex, that's one of the assignments that, that's one of ECAC's assignments. So everything, this is all great, thanks for letting me participate. So these are among the things that we've learned through this exercise, that the regulators are allowing more flexibility, but we don't know that you want more flexibility because you need your money to be safe. So that's what the ECAC assignment will be, is to look at that flexibility and tell you whether they think, hey, maybe you should have some of it invested differently, or whether that you shouldn't. So part of it, kind of a cool evolution, I think.
I think we have consensus that everyone is okay with the township having more money. Do we need a motion and?
It's probably a good idea for this one.
I'll make a motion to authorize the adjustment of the structure of the interest rate for various bank accounts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment?
Great news.
Great.
It's great news.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Very good. Moving on to, and thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And Don, thank you guys for identifying that.
Yes, you did the legwork on it, so good for you, so appreciate it.
Moving on to item J, fire station professional service agreement.
Yeah, I'll summarize it, and then if you have particular questions, John and I can answer the questions. Little background, if you recall, the initial agreement was signed by the fire companies, not by you. You authorized the payment of, you assumed 100% responsibility for the payment, but the initial professional service agreement with the architect was with the fire company. Since your involvement, you have added costs and complexity to it. Some of that is your choices, some of that was beyond your control. The architect has asked for an increase in the fee to reflect the changes in the scope of the project. The initial agreement was with the fire company, so it's a little unclear who they would want to get that permission from. The reality is you are paying, so it really can't happen unless you would, or shouldn't happen unless you agree to it. So that's the reason why it's before you. The metric that we see as the key metric is the total professional service relative to the construction cost of the project. So that if you add the $36,000 in, you're still at the architect's fee at about 6% of construction, which we understand to be a reasonable, fair market fee for the architect. And finally, the architect is, you need the architect because in this kind of scenario where you find yourself battling with the contractor, you need the professional on your side to help you battle against the contractor.
East Town's portion would only be about 11,000.
Yes, the 36,000 is the net increase, the total fee increase, you pay a third of that.
Is any of the increase from our facade work?
Yes.
And so Tredeffen is not making us pay.
Yeah,
for that.
we're separating, we've gotten pretty granular and we've separated that out as best we can. Yeah, so I think that's separated out.
Right.
We have. Yeah.
Oh, we have, okay, I was gonna say Tredeffen is generally pretty easygoing about these things.
Yeah.
One of the
Flexible
things,
with us.
one of the things your architect, Core Stakes Group here has been doing is keeping separate ledgers for the amount that was the facade.
Okay, so this 36,000 doesn't include the facade.
Right. So the 36,000 is largely based off of, they had to split the project into two portions so every bill that he reviews, every A1A, AIA form that he reviews is in two groups. So he's doing it, not because Tredeffen East Town, but because the actual funding of the project is split. And then there was the 1 year delay, so there's time there.
I was trying to make a point, which didn't come out, but Tredeffen has been very They haven't nitpicked, they haven't nickel and dimed us on a lot of stuff. I just want to make that point. Apparently that this doesn't fit in that category, but, you know,
And
Devon's been a great partner in doing this.
they have, and earlier tonight, because they meet tonight at the same time as you do, earlier tonight, this was on their agenda, they did adopt this tonight on their app, so.
So it says 36.5 for additional CA from a result of change orders, during design construction. Is this just for architecture? Is there a separate change order for engineering, or is engineering rolled up into the architecture as well?
This is only for the architect, and we haven't heard it, we don't have anything from the engineer.
Okay.
I don't know if the engineer, in the scale of the engineering will rise to this
I don't
level.
believe so.
Yeah, we don't have anything brewing at the moment.
And then what was the dollar amount of the change order for, let's say, the design for the architect? I know you had presented us the construction cost. The contractor amount for the change order was like a few $100,000. I remember whatever that number came out to be. Do you remember what the amount was for the architect for design when they had the change order?
For the facade?
Yeah. Or all inclusive, for
Yeah,
all this stuff?
well, the number that we.
It doesn't have to be perfect, just
Yeah.
ballpark.
Well, the 500,000 was inclusive of both, and the architect's fee was aligned to traditional, so in the 10
5
to
to
12%, yeah, something like that. So I'm going from memory, but I believe that I'm correct. You're marginally under in the total cost of that, and the distribution was aligned to expectation. So, and when you approved it, again, I'm going from memory, when you approved it, you didn't say we approved blank for the architect and blank for the engineer and blank for the construction. You said we approve up to blank, and then we worked backwards to keep it in that nugget, and it stayed in the nugget of conventional.
Yeah, I think for the dollar amounts, it's not worth hashing out too much. I think we have the contingency fund. I think it still fits within that. It's not that big of a deal. Just generally, what these types of construction projects, usually around, let's say somewhere between 20 and 30% is usually what you expect for construction, like contract administration CA, compared to what a design fee would be. That's just general ballpark. So like a $36,000 change order, if that's 20%, it would be like what's that? $180,000, architecture design fee change. So if that $500,000 total construction cost was inclusive of design, then it's probably not that bad of a deal.
I think so. That's a lot there, but the initial fee from 2021 was like $350,000. So this even then sort of fits into that category of it's not an excessive increase in the construction administration for scenarios that had very, very sizable increases in construction.
Right.
Not through faults, or some of them were choices, some of them were things beyond your control.
Cool, I'm fine with it, thank you.
Right, so I move we accept the fee change of $11,000, or a total 36,000, 11,000 being East Ham's responsibility.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, aye. Moving on to the departmental reports, is there anything anyone from the board wanted to pull out, or anything that staff wanted to bring to the board's attention?
No, I think we'll sit back and wait for your questions.
Quick question, did you review Lakeside's work? You or Colleen, did you review what they did that
Of the-
tore the,
Yeah.
tore that up and
We
closed
both
the, okay, good.
And Chuck. Didn't go as well as it should have, and they were told about it, but everything's in order now.
Okay, good.
I had one quick thing, the snow budget, that wasn't in the report, but we're sitting at around 52% of our budget at this point, so we're in good shape there, and pretty much just had December to worry about afterward for 2025.
Don, when was the last time we went negative on that, or we exceeded the budget for snow? I feel like you've been really conservative in the last few years on that.
Yeah, so you had a year, one of those years you were at like 275. So one year you followed, like, one year you budgeted 125, you spent 80, the next year you budgeted 80, and you spent 275. So
It's the weather.
the last 5 or 6 years, we have budgeted in the middle. So we're not budgeting for an easy winter, we're not budgeting for a multiple nor'easter winter. If you have multiple nor'easters, or even a nor'easter now, you know, might cost you $50,000. It can be an expensive 36-hour storm. So maybe 4 years ago, you went over by $200,000 because you had multiple nor'easters in March.
And we can safely store the salt over the summer.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I have a comment. We're hiring a new person, I want to call him Parks and Rec, but support.
Public Works.
Public
Public Works labor.
Right, so Public Works is, and we, the board, want them to do stuff that the residents are interested in, right? That benefit the residents. So I would, just like we have a finance work group and a police work group, I would at a minimum like to sit down with Joe and Don once a month and just understand what those projects are and where they're heading and report back to the board. I don't know if somebody else would, if you want to create a full work group or just have me do that, but I'm very interested in doing that.
And on my end, that's great. Like I told you at those, the benefit of the work group for me is that we get to have just regular conversations about how to operate the government. Like we would never want to operate in a manner that isn't aligned to how you want it operated. And it gives us those little check-ins to have conversations. So we want this person to be very active in kind of changing the culture a little bit. Like we want to get ahead of things in the parks. We want to not fix when fail in the parks, fix before they fail. And the more input we get from you, the better. So the work group is a great idea, whether it's just Michael, whether it's Michael and someone else, whether it's a little more formal, up to you, but we love the idea of informal feedback on it.
Sure, I mean, I think that's a good idea, and, yeah, wondering if involving Parks and Rec makes any sense, if that's, I don't know if that's feasible or how, because I have no preconceptions as to what this would look like, but Parks and Rec presumably should also be involved, because they do a lot, so like, I'm sure they have good input. But
Yeah.
I think Park and Rec is involved through, you know, their monthly meetings.
Yeah.
They're integral to all of these things that are happening.
So John's the liaison to Parks and Rec. So if we include John, then we get that input.
Yeah,
And then
in my vision of this,
feedback to
it's public works, it's not streets, it's not facilities, it's public works.
Mhm.
So it would include, I don't know that it needs me, I would include Joe and John.
Mhm.
And, how to get the informal feedback. I think John is getting the informal feedback from Park and Rec already because there's a mechanism for that. If you wanted to create a working group to get board feedback, you could do it. If you wanted Michael to just do it as an individual for a while and then report back to you in 3 months, how it's going, you can decide if you want to create a working group for it.
it could turn into nothing. It could turn into really useful.
yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that, I think it's a good.
So probably just Michael, just
Mhm.
sort of a one-person work group you will report to the board on, and it will be Michael and the staff to stay informed on operations and how we can improve them.
Great. And my informal feedback is directly from the residents. So we hear from them, things that they see that are consistent issues or things that can be done better, whether it's vegetation, sight distance on corners, or potholes. We take care of those, but now that we have someone else, we could look into those before we get a call to mitigate some of those calls in the first place.
Anything else or any other board comments? Or any public comments in relation to departmental reports? Hearing now, moving on to regular business. First up, we have the Citizen Communication Advisory Board appointments.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a snapshot. You had three applicants. I need some feedback from you. Do you want to, the position's still open? Do you want us to keep the position open? Do you want to make the appointments and start the process and keep the position open and add people if they volunteer?
I quickly reviewed the qualifications. They look like qualified individuals who have, reasonable backgrounds in this area, so I think moving forward with an appointment. And then keeping the position, the other vacancies open so that people can join as.
So if that's the direction of the board, then this would be an action item for you at your April meeting to create the committee with the applicants that you've identified. If we get more between now and then, we'll let you know that. And then once you create it in April, we'll initiate it late April and May.
Great. Very good. All right, moving on to the township shredding events. Sean, I think this is an item.
Yeah, so the library approached me, the Friends group of the library that works with them had shredding events that they do for the community as a library fundraiser, but the library, the Friends felt that the price just kept going up on them. And they were unable to feel that it was going to be a good fundraiser anymore, it was just gonna be too expensive. So they asked if the township would like to offer it as a service to the community in relation, like in partnership with the library. Spoke to Margaret McKenzie, who said that the library staff would run it. And that they would hopefully have some of us attend as well, but it'd be something that when I raised with John said it'd be something possibly that a grant that we received, recycling grant, did we say?
Potentially.
Would be a potential way to fund this. It would be, I know the library has very much, a lot of people great interest in this event. I think it's a great event to offer the community. It'd be something that we could host at the library's offered to host it, something we could host there and host one here. So there's definitely, it's definitely an opportunity for us, and if it could be funded by a grant potentially, it'd be even better. So it's just something I wanted to bring to the board's attention. It's something to possibly be interested in and offering to the community twice a year. And be something where we would do something where we could have so many bags are free up to a certain point, and maybe then they have to pay, the rest would be a pay or a donation to the library, any additional. So just be ideas that we could throw around before the event could occur.
Do we know what the buy-in is? Like, what's the cost?
Depending on the duration of the event, you're probably looking between $3,000 and $5,000 per event. So it's $1,500 an hour is pretty average. If we booked several of them, it might come down to $1,200 sort of thing. But the vendor that we've used for the township for the last few years for the program document destruction here has a lower overall cost than the provider that the library had been sourcing. So we were able to lower the cost or the estimate initially. Then if you're doing a 2-hour event versus 3-hour event, or it also depends when the truck is full, So.
And like, what were the grants? If we did apply for grants and received a grant, how much would that cover?
So currently you're receiving grants through the 904 program, which is a tabulation of all of your recycling collected. So Susan manages the 904 for you. That money just goes back into the general fund when it's received. So you're receiving money already through your single stream recycling efforts through your waste hauler. So initially, for this year, it may be best to fund it through. You probably, I don't know if you have time to do both. You could probably do 2 events still this year. It's still early in the year. So you can either fund those through your supervisor projects, budget line, or Susan and I can work on looking at the 904 line. The 904 fluctuates, that's the only thing, but normally we're receiving 24 to 30,000 roughly. So.
I mean, to me, this doesn't seem like a big expenditure. It kind of fits within.
It's very normal municipal government service is what we've seen in the region. Lots of municipalities offer it because lots of residents like it.
I know Rep. Schusterman has events around here as well. Do we know where they're located?
They vary through the representative districts.
I think one of them was, I don't know if it was her, Committa may have had it at Penn State. Great Valley or something there. They're pretty large, I know, events that they have. But I don't recall it being in East Town.
Would we only allow East Town residents or would we allow non-residents?
How does the library do? Does it tend to be mostly East Town residents, or do you find that it pulls in a lot of?
Well, we think that it comes from everywhere because, you know, they look at what's on the website.
Right.
And, yeah, but, you know, so it's been running for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. And so far, the library isn't paying for it, but they keep on increasing the cost. So it came to a point that, you know, it's not in our budget anymore, but it'll be a great thing if, you know, we can pull together and do this event.
Well, I mean, I know I'd be okay adding it. I don't know how everyone feels.
And what happens to the stuff that gets shredded?
So everything gets shredded on site. There's a video camera that actually shows your toter getting shredded, and then it gets recycled. So the vendor we've been using internally for document destruction is Wiggins out of Westchester. They have a certified recycling drop-off location, so.
My understanding is people are pretty, you know, careful about where that paper goes, so they watch that thing to be shredded, and then the truck takes it away.
And it'd be good combos.
Is there any formal board action?
So do you have is there a financial limit that you want to put on it? Is there a target amount? John, you think the budget amount is about $4,000 an event?
Is that be safe?
Yeah.
So $8,000
Yeah.
total for the year.
If you had two of them, it would be, I think, you know, for planning purposes, assume $8,000. And then you have the, yeah, you have a supervisor project line item. It's from capital. I don't know, you know, I don't know if that creates a problem. It might not be a capital expenditure.
Well, there's no event plans within the next, like, between now and next meeting, right? So we can.
Well, I believe the library typically did their spring one sometime shortly after tax day.
Yeah.
To be thematic with.
Sometime that period, yeah.
So
Can
the-
move a week or two.
And Margaret said the other one usually was in October.
Yeah, 6 months.
So, but to your question, I think you'd be fine if you wanted to.
Maybe just. Do you think 4,000 would be okay, Don, without having to check the ledgers too?
There's always 4,000 like that's on your scale. There's like 4,000 in general, there's 4,000 in something. Appropriately, I'm looking for line items too, like, so what's the line item that it goes in? I don't know if it's a capital project, maybe it is, like it's a capital initiative, you know, like it's a service that's, if you buy a piece of equipment to move the stuff, you know, it's a capital expense. So we'd be able to find a home for it. If you're comfortable with the magnitude of the expense, we would find a home for it.
And then we would just work with the library to pick a weekend in late April, most likely.
And probably, yeah, we'd find a home for it one way or another on that scale.
It would be also a great community outreach for our township.
Yeah, and it could be you have a community events line item that traditionally has been populated with your deferred salary. That's how it was arrived at. So that would probably be the strongest, the best candidate for it. So if you think it's a good idea and you want us to do it, I think you target a budget amount and you direct us to initiate it, and then John will do the legwork with the library.
Okay.
What's the amount? We're hearing $4,000 per event in 2 events.
Sounds good.
Okay. Andy, any action needed, or is that sort of just like sounds like the
Yeah, I think also if it's within sort of the project budget, which is that basket you
Yeah.
described,
I think so.
it's already within budget, and what you pay for it runs in a bill run. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's a consensus basically, and noting the minutes that you authorize it.
So staff will work with the library to facilitate two of these exercises, one in spring and one in fall, at a target budget amount of around $4,000 each.
Very good.
Works?
Thank you. Thanks. All right, moving on to item C is the responsible contractor ordinance. This is an item that I know other townships have considered and enacted. Basically what it does is it provides support to businesses that provide apprenticeship programs to their employees. There's a model ordinance that's kind of been floating around. The idea is just give the township a mechanism to give support to those sorts of organizations. I talked to Andy briefly about model ordinances that have been passed, using that as a template. I think probably that's something I'm willing to, push forward. But I think the big sticking point is what threshold limits we want to have. Obviously, in trying to pass such an ordinance, we wouldn't want to affect any smaller businesses. So I think other townships have set a threshold of approximately $250,000 projects. Meaning that if the project is less than $250,000, you don't have to, you could be a responsible contractor, but you don't have to be. And I thought that was something worthy of pursuing for the township. I want to see how everyone felt about that. And Andy, if you had any input in your experience with those ordinances?
Yeah, just along the exact lines of what you said, some municipalities just use the bid threshold, which is really $24,000 this year. That's pretty low. Because the apprentice programs, you see it with like the Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, they have a program. The state will certify trades groups that provide that training. But so where I think you see it more effective, as Eric mentioned, like Westchester Borough, they had a lot of debate. They had a lot of technical specs. At the end, they kind of simplified it and went at 250,000, so that they're basically looking at large public works. That if you're expanding a municipal building or something like that, you may want to have a requirement or an encouragement. It would be up to you. The encouragement's a little trickier in a bid spec, because how do you weight it? But if you simply require it, I'd suggest you're looking at pretty big projects, because it might be hard to find a bidder who has that kind of training program in a small item that is just over the bid threshold.
And I would say, give some thought to your liquid fuels program is right at that threshold of around 250. So if you wanted that included, the 250 threshold would include it. You've probably never gotten more than 400 in your liquid fuels. That's a regular repeating one. The rest of them are kind of special.
Would it make it more difficult for procurement for something like that, or no?
Well, my gut would tell me that it could. For road program in particular, it could. So if you have contractors that are responding to $125,000 projects, they're going to have a more difficult time with this item than somebody responding to a $10 million project.
What trades are involved in a road project? Like, there's no electricians, or
Probably,
plumbers,
yeah.
right? So what apprenticeships would there be?
I don't know that there would be any.
Right.
Yeah.
The biggest one I see is with electrical, the
Yeah,
electrical
right.
component of a public.
Yeah, electrical, plumbing, the trades. That's where I see it. I'm comfortable with 100,000 or anywhere in that.
And you
50
can craft it too. The other thing I had kind of thought about, and just thinking out loud, and Eric and I communicated, you could also leave some discretion. Like it could be an ordinance, or when you have the big projects, you could direct staff and we to work up a spec that, requires that, as opposed to if you have an ordinance and it's always required, you have it, But if you have a big project coming, you could just direct all of us to make that part of the bid spec, and you could decide it that way. It'd be up to you.
It may be difficult to, so you have a trash bid coming up.
Right.
It may be difficult to get any bidders if you're requiring an apprenticeship. That doesn't typically occur with any of the waste haulers. The places I've seen apprenticeships actually existing are on your Alan Myers level, Route 202, $28 million a mile type expansions, and they'll have a 0.0001 requirement of apprenticeships. It's not something, it's typically something I've seen on it's very fruitful on the municipal level. I know other municipalities have enacted it, but sometimes all it does is reduce the number of actual bids.
I read a couple of the ordinances, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that we just need to settle on kind of a threshold issue, and then we can kind of carve it out as we see that, and keeping in mind the issues that it may create with township staff in terms of like getting projects done. Like the point isn't to impede getting township projects done, it's to encourage businesses that provide apprenticeship programs, which seems to relate mostly to trade type work, so it's not,
And you're a
and
one
that's something that
to,
can be carved out.
you have, your MS4 projects are around 200 to 250,000, your paving is 200 to 400,000. Other than that, I think you're only special, you've got some pipe projects that have been in the millions.
We had a hell of a time getting bidders just as is on Berlin, force main replacement
Yeah,
projects.
and also
That was a lot bigger than
you
that.
couldn't get bidders on, you had $125,000 project for a Dorset sewer, and you stopped because you couldn't get any bidders on it. So I don't know the intricacies of it. To me, there is a scenario that if you require this for a threshold that is so low, you are forcing out the typical vendors that respond to you and only opening it to the vendor like the one that John identified. If that's your choice, it's good. It's just that you have fewer of those kinds of projects than the smaller ones.
Yeah, I'm nervous that it has an unintended effect of making even fewer bidders than we typically get for some of these, maybe let's say more niche projects that might be beholden to this. So I'd be in favor of either bumping it up to a pretty high threshold or doing it on a more prescriptive basis, kind of like Andy was talking about. Like there's a large project, we know it's a large project, we want to make sure that this is a requirement in that large project. I would prefer to approach it that way, but I'm open to seeing more detail.
And nothing is issued without your approval. So every single project, regardless of how small, is brought to you to have that kind of discussion if you want to have it.
And if you wanted to leave a policy marker that people can find, you could do it by resolution to say, inappropriate projects of a certain size where the trades have those programs available, you'll encourage staff to incorporate that into a bid package. And then it's formal, it's a formal encouragement, but it's not required in every case where you might run into trouble.
Are you saying about 250,000?
Yeah, I think it's low.
Go higher, 250.
Yeah, I would say $1 million or more, but
I think 100 is plenty.
All right, what were you thinking initially?
Well, I think that I just going off of what other townships have done, I think Westchester did 250, which that's what jumped out at me as like a pretty reasonable number, but maybe I'll take a look at other model or whether townships that have formulated their ordinances and maybe report back with like where they've fallen, how they've structured the ordinance, because there are valid considerations. We don't want to limit, our ability to get good bidders on contracts in pursuit of, what I think is pretty good policy, which is encouraging apprenticeship programs. So maybe like, I'll do that and we can come back in April with maybe something more certain in terms of looking at and considering for passing instead of just kind of the idea of an ordinance. Go from there.
I think I have a couple of other non-county examples I could send your way to.
Yeah, I think there's like a model.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at it. But
One or two are pretty granular.
okay.
And so that's where I think simplicity for a second-class township will be important, so.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any other?
Do we know if Tredegar has one?
Locally, I'm aware of Westchester Borough and then West Goshen Township,
Okay.
and they both passed them in 22, I think.
There's another one. I can't recall it.
Yeah, I found like 3. But I don't know where they
In the
were.
county, or?
Yeah, Chester County, so, yeah.
Okay, any other comment? Any public comment? Moving on to liaison and work group reports. First up, we have the library board of trustees.
So the library reported that the foundation is doing very well. We have our annual Barbara Robinson visit coming up. We have a wine tasting event in May. Their book sales have been very successful. And we talked about the shredding issue that they were having. They're having a wine tasting at Waynesboro on May 15th. They reviewed their bylaws and talked about community stakeholders coming from the community, and then library recognition within the community. And that's about it. The next meeting is on March 26th.
Next up, historical commission.
It's also me. And on the 12th, Waynesboro, they had their bluebird project. They put up these little bluebird nest areas, and they're clearing a trail for more birding programs. America 250, talking about how Waynesboro can participate. They're looking into planning summer, fall events. Signage for businesses in the area and other approvals took place. Tomorrow they were meeting about America 250. And there's a new they were talking about new marker planning for the bronze building. That marker's in, right, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's upstairs, if you'd like to see it.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to EMA.
Yeah, they met on March 11th. Flow is way down. It does not mean people are not flushing. It means there's no water. We're not getting enough rain. Some minor details. The big thing was the Chester Road sewer line.
Yes.
It has to be replaced. They approved spending, I think, $250,000 to replace it out of their bond proceeds. I guess there's still money left in the bond proceeds.
Yeah, a combination of the bond proceeds and the Fund 63.
Does that mean we're not doing the projects the bond proceeds were intended?
No, the bond proceeds are the bond proceeds were intended for 3 projects.
Right.
And we're considering this one of 3 because this is a source of I&I. So I&I was one of the projects that you authorized the bond proceeds for. And then this money is residual left over from the bonds.
Okay, I was just, they could have just approved spending $200,000. It was interesting to me. The EFSA, there's a meeting planned for late March, looking into, they can, right now it's lumpy, right? We got 400,000 this year, 600,000 next year, million, whatever year, see if we can do it through bond to pay those more even over time. There's one request for EU, and they paid their bills.
Moving on to stormwater management.
That also, they also met on March 11th. PRP Project 3. I don't know. And they had a big long discussion on riparian buffers, how important they are and how important the trees are to the stream health.
Police worker,
We haven't met.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec are, planning the, April event, the Easter event right now. Pretty much it.
Thank you. Planning Commission?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring my notes. Maybe I could get a little help on that.
Sure. So, a zoning hearing board application was presented for the Delaware County Christian School to increase the maximum impervious surface. Waynesboro Country Club presented their land development application, which you saw tonight earlier, and they made a motion to approve and pass along their 2024 annual summary, which was attached to my planning memo in your packet.
Thank you. ECAC?
They met on March 10th. A large chunk of the meeting was about the bank rate decision that we made tonight. They also talked about the projects that we discussed tonight. And that's about it. Oh, they talked about having fire and EMS come and talk to them on a regular basis.
Finance work group?
I think we met.
Yeah, I don't think. Right, or do we meet?
Pension at the break wall.
Yeah, you're right. Fire EMS?
I apologize again because I raced off to California and didn't bring my notes on it, but I know Don typed up a sheet that's very informative, and I wouldn't mind at all, Don, if you took that on, the review of that meeting. It was pretty intense.
I didn't go, so.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we talked about was the building.
Right.
And then the building and this prospective COs of the building and who has to do what to make sure that that it's proceeding correctly. The issue with the architect was one of and the fee was one of probably the principal element. And the output that you voted tonight was probably the principal action that came from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
EAC meets this week. Neighborhood Watch has not met. HR work group. We didn't.
We met, we discussed some internal, internal policies and things like that.
And pension work group.
I did not attend.
Did meet, correct, you did have the presentation. Yep. And so, yeah, so did meet, had the quarterly presentation. Received the quarterly report. Just what everybody else is doing. It was a good year for stocks, so that's reflected in the
Through 12/31.
in the snapshot, yeah.
It's changed a little since.
Yes.
They were heavy on that test.
Yeah, okay, moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment?
On that or?
I'm sorry. Moving on to the public comments section of the meeting. Is there any public comment?
Yes.
Yes.
I have been emailing
to
with
tell
you, Eric. Oh, I'm Kathy Silverman, my husband Craig. We live at 407 Little Brook Road. We've been dealing with a neighbor who has been burning yard waste, and all the smoke goes right into our house to the point where we have to run air purifiers on high in our house
Or leave
because,
the house.
or leave the house because the smoke is so thick. It happened last Sunday and I got so frustrated. I have in the past tried to talk to our neighbor and he has not been cooperative.
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, and so a week ago Sunday, I actually called the police department and they sent over the police staff and
Fire department.
the fire department. They went and talked to him. They were there for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes. They left. The fire continued. And then, so that was on Sunday. On Thursday, they went and had their whole yard cleaned up and took away all the stuff that they were planning to burn. And I took photos of what they were planning to burn because it was not like just logs like a fire pit. It is brush with.
It's yard waste.
It's yard waste.
It's not kumbaya and s'mores with the kids. This is not a Home Depot fire pit. This is a very large, maybe 4x4 grate with cinder blocks around it. And the reason it was put, he owns 3 properties. We're at 407. And this is just Now, from the west to the west, so we're upwind from us, so the west of us is 411, it's a little guest house that he owns. Then there's 415, which is a property which just has a swimming pool. It is a property though. Then his house, I believe, is 419. So their house is 2 houses away from the fire pit. When asked originally, when the fire pit went in, why'd you put it here? Because we didn't want smoke in our house, they said. Well, it doesn't help us as we're directly 50 yards downwind from this. And we get people want to have a little get together, fine with that. This is smoke, it is so acrid, you can't be in the yard, you've got to close the windows, and even then.
It's forest fire, it's
It's,
not
it's
campfire.
like you're in a forest fire, it's just, the burn is just ridiculous. The one point where our neighbor who's in a flag lot about 100 yards behind us came running out, yelling. It was a couple of years ago, and that doesn't happen every day, but when it happens, our house gets shut down. We cannot, we have to shut everything. If the windows were open, everything in that house would be ruined. I realize it's just us here, it's just talking, but I have better time, better things to do than waste everybody's time. And Michael and Eric, thank you so much for treating this, with importance and getting back to us, appreciate it.
Did we ever get a report from the fire chief?
We did speak with the officer that responded out that night. He said that they looked at the fire pit. It is it's a recreational pit, but it's like a little more permanent than what most people see.
It's not Home Depot, right? Yeah.
Right. He said there were only 3 logs in the pit.
Okay.
However, it was causing a lot of smoke from those logs.
Yes.
So the officer spoke with the gentleman briefly about, it is causing a lot of smoke, but there was no violations of anything.
So our police officer talked to him.
Yes, and
What about the fire?
Fire was there.
Yeah, I believe it was deputy fire chief.
But they didn't see a violation of it.
Yeah, we understand that there may not be, but
Right.
our quality of life is destroyed every time that thing gets lighted. And again,
And I thought we weren't allowed to burn in Easttown Township. Yard waste, I
Well, there's
understand.
exceptions, right?
Yeah, we looked at it a little bit, I mean, there's a broad ban, and then there are exceptions for things like ceremonial or recreational fires. It sounds like this is in the gray area towards the nuisance side.
Big time.
Yeah, the county may be willing to help, because one of the reasons you passed that ordinance is because the county was trying to stop generalized open burning. Consider an enforcement action. I think we would need more facts to do that. Just to make sure that if you do an enforcement action, it sticks. You said the property owner cleared out, I guess, the fuel for the thing?
there was this repository of just, I guess, a year or several years of just yard waste, which is.
Well, it was down like pine tree branches, it was things that he had cut, so it had all the greenery on it, it's fresh cut, I mean, it's smoky stuff, it's not cured wood that you use in
And
your
where
fire.
did he put it?
It was
Right
just-
around the fire
It
pit.
was just to the, about 10 feet, maybe 10, 15 feet to the west of the fire pit.
But he moved it?
No, it was always there. It's just been a repository where he's just kept dumping
Oh.
yard waste and
He
dumping yard
didn't,
waste.
he didn't move it or get rid of it in reaction to
What happened
On
on
Thursday, he did.
On Thursday was an army of landscapers that completely did this. They did the fall clean out and the spring clean out, and they removed all of it.
And where did it go?
Well, the landscapers took it and probably composted.
Okay.
it. Yeah, no, it's all property. It's all
Okay.
property, yes, yes.
Right, so you're not expecting another fire like.
Well, not,
So here's.
not.
He doesn't have fuel to
Fire
have
pit.
another fire.
He doesn't have fuel right now.
All it is
Exactly,
what he
exactly.
burns.
But he's taken it away
It's
now.
all gone now.
Okay.
Gone now.
And then that's how close it is to his guest house, and this is the fence that's our property line. So it's all like right there.
I mean, it's unfortunate, it's directly downwind. You can't avoid it.
Sounds like it's been effective in making him
And you hope to
move the stuff, yeah.
or not trying to burn yard waste it.
So I just suggested if it builds up again, and it continues, that we contact the township staff and we can work together to see if there's a solution. I'm not sure there's a simple or easy one, but,
We appreciate that, we understand, yeah. We understand it's not our way or the highway, we totally get that, but it's gotta be, and we were nice, we were so nice to them from the beginning, we do nothing, they don't hear us, they don't smell us, and yet we just asked, please don't do this, and it was like, no, I have the right to do this. You know,
yeah.
as just,
And it's not an unfettered right. It sounds like maybe your call was effective if you removed fuel. But
that's what we're hoping.
I think
I'm hoping that, and the reason that I went to that extreme was the time that put me over the edge was our son's college graduation. We were having a ton of family and friends over. It was an outside party and he was burning. And I went over and I talked to him and I asked him nicely and he said, no, I'm burning my fire and this is my right. And it just kept blowing right into the party.
And then I tried to talk to him nicely, you know, hey, I really, you know, we really like you as neighbors. Well, I really don't appreciate you. Like, I see this is going, great conversation. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's one of the,
So I said, that's it. When it's been before and it's been a little smoky, not too bad. This one was so bad, I was like, I'm done. I just need action to taken and I don't know what to do.
It's accurate if that's the right description. It's not like, oh, somebody's burning the fire. How nice, how quaint. No. You can't, your eyes would tear up if you went into our yard. So we appreciate your attention. And again, Michael and Eric, thank you. I know based on all this that's going on in the township, I know it's small potatoes, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always frustrating to deal with somebody who's not the best neighbor. So the next time it happens, I definitely make sure to reach out to the township.
We try to be the olive branch people, you know, but sometimes it's,
Yeah, sometimes people just need a gentle nudge to remember.
okay, so it's on record and we can bring it up, we'll bring it up.
Yeah, well, the township, yeah, I mean, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but we serve the residents and we have
Yeah, I
issues.
mean,
and-
I'll have to
well,
talk
we
to-
address issues that we can deal with.
Right, we'll talk, I have a few ideas, I'll share them with Andy. I'm hesitant to share them now because I have to share, wiser for me to share them with Andy first.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's really impressive to see how the township runs. We've never been to and put faces behind the names that we vote for. So it's always good to see.
Yes, you're welcome to come every time we meet.
Thank you.
Like-
Thank you so much. Have a
Thanks.
good evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to announcements. You know, every week or every meeting, I always read this list. I think I'll just refer the general public to the list of announcements. I think it saves everyone a lot of
On the
time
last
and
page of the
anguish of having to
packet.
listen to me for
And
2 to 3 minutes. Very frustrating for everyone, I'm sure. So.
exec session, if you're gonna have one, best to announce it, correct, Andy?
Mr. And John, do you have topics to discuss?
Real estate.
Okay,
Okay.
and I would do a brief litigation update for you as well.
Okay, so reportedly having an executive session following this meeting based on those topics. So I have a motion to adjourn.
So.
Second. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.